one of the highlights of my life. I had never met Aretha Franklin, so I was so inspired by so many greats. Stevie Wonder, of course, Luther Vandross, who gave me one of the highlights of my life. In that, you know how they say you have to pay your dues and come
Yeah.
up. It was really a blessing for us, releasing Optimistic as one of our first singles right straight out the box.
Yeah.
And we were doing Arsenio Hall show, and it was our album release day. Went back after Arsenio's taping and went to A&M to have our CD release. And Luther's camp called Jimmy Tarum and Terry Lewis and said, we want that group to go out on tour, on this Power of Love tour,
Wow.
and be a part. So it was like God had blessed us to go and be with the best right out of the box.
Yeah.
And so it was a blessing to be able to learn from the best, Luther Vandross, who we always loved and
Yeah.
cherished because of his professionalism. I learned so much and inspired by him so much. One of the highlights of my life. I had never met Aretha Franklin. And while we were out on tour, Luther would come over to the dressing room and we would talk and laugh,
Wow.
and just have a ball. And he said, who are some of the artists that inspired you that you've never met? And I was like, I said, well, you topped everything. But one of my favorite, Aretha Franklin, he said, really? I said, yes. He said, oh, we're great friends. I can make that happen. He said, when we get to Detroit, he said, I'm going to make sure that happens. But God blessed it and willed it so that, as I said, the highlight of my life, Sounds of Blackness, Luther Vandross, at the Grammy Awards, the first Grammy with Sounds of Blackness, Luther Vandross called me
Mm.
down to the front of the auditorium
Yeah.
during the rehearsal. And he said, have you met Aretha yet? I was like, no. He said, well, come down here. And when I got down there, Luther Vandross introduced me to Aretha Franklin.
Wow.
We received a Grammy. We sang background for Aretha and Michael McDonald and Luther Vandross. One of the highlights of my life. Aretha Franklin was one of my greatest mentors, and then being there with Luther, who was one of my greatest. It was a blessing and an honor.